Let me introduce myself. My name is Maulana Fitria.
Hello, my name is Muhammad Iqbal Soldin.
Hello, my name is Naila Saada.
And now I will presentation about voiced and voiceless. The first material is the importance of learning voiced and voiceless. It's important to teach English language learners the difference between voiced and voiceless consonant sounds and how they are formed. It's especially helpful to teach the sounds in pairs to contrast their pronunciation and identify their distinctive means of production. For example, B and V can be difficult for Latin American Spanish speakers to distinguish because the B sound in Spanish is often softened. Elvano is frequently pronounced Elvano. Similarly, Arabic speakers may have difficulty hearing the differences between many people and many people because the B and P sounds overlap so much in their native tongue. Thankfully, the voiceless distinction is consistent throughout spoken English, and there are a number of ways to demonstrate it, such as the technique where you hold a small piece of paper in front of your mouth, making a clear P sound, produce a short puff of air of voiceless that vibrates the piece of paper as it expels. In contrast, the B sound occurs in your throat, so the paper won't move when you said it. But if you place your index finger and thumb on your voice box, you'll feel it vibrate as you voice the sound. The technique also provides students with a visible method of gauging their own pronunciation of consonant. Voiced voiceless pronunciation can be taught early on in tandem with grammar. As we learn regular past tense endings, for example, the it ending as the T in liked, D in played, and ed in hate, or the plural endings as, z, and is. The challenge for pronunciation of particular consonant pairs will differ depending on our mother tongue. But we will find problems very often reside in whether they are using the appropriate voice or voiceless technique to reproduce the sound. There are various websites where we can find lists of consonant pairs for English, but it's also important to listen to our pronunciation in light of what we know of native language and, of course, the common speaking errors it can produce when we are learning English. The next material is introduction. Phrasing is an important feature of speech sounds, which is used not only as a feature but also as a distinction for describing sounds. There are sounds such as vowels, nasal and approximants, sonorants, which are usually voiced tau in particular contexts. The voicing may be weak or absent. On the other hand, there are sounds which may be voiced or voiceless, such as fricatives and plosives, together called obstruents. Obstruents are the most frequently found sounds that have both voicing and voicelessness. Remember that voiced and voiceless can make a phonemic distinction in language such as English. Thus, the meaning of a word can change if one uses a voiceless sound instead of a voiced sound. A glottal stop is only an allophonic variation and is used in RPB4, PTK, and some dialect. The three can even be replaced by a glottal stop altogether. The symbol for a glottal stop is like a question mark. The next material is consonant. Consonants are produced by restricting and then releasing the flow of air in three ways: vibrating the vocal cords, changing the part of the anatomy which restricts the airflow, and changing the extent to which the airflow is restricted. Consonants with relatively little vibration of the vocal cords are called voiceless consonants. Consonants with relatively more vibration of the vocal cords are called voiced.
Consonants fall into the following categories, depending on what part of the anatomy is used to restrict the airflow. Labial airflow is restricted with the lips. Dental airflow is restricted with the teeth. Labiodental airflow is restricted with the top teeth on the bottom lip. If both lips are used, the sound is called bilabial. Next is alveolar. Airflow is restricted by placing the tongue on the hard plate or alveolum behind the top front teeth. Next is palatal. Airflow is restricted by placing the tongue on the soft palate behind the alveolum. Next is velar. Airflow is restricted by placing the tongue far back in the mouth. Next is glottal. Airflow is restricted by tightening the folds in the vocal cords or glottis. Consonants can also be categorized by the extent to which the airflow is restricted. Stop. Airflow is stopped and released quickly. Next is fricative. Airflow is released gradually. Next is affricate. Airflow is stopped and released gradually. Next is nasal. Airflow is channeled through the nasal cavity. Next is liquid. Airflow is channeled around the sides of the tongue. Next is glide. Airflow is only partially restricted. The sounds are often called semivowels. Next is voice and voiceless. Phonetic is who study the sound of human voice, divide consonants into two types, voice and voiceless. Voice consonants require the use of the vocal cords to produce their signature sounds. Voiceless consonants do not. Both types use the breath, lips, teeth, and upper palate to further modify speech. This guide presents the difference between voiced and voiceless consonants and give you some tips for using them. Voiced consonants. Your vocal cords, which are actually mucous membranes, stretch across the larynx at the back of the throat by tightening and relaxing as you speak. The vocal cords modulate the flow of breath expelled from the lungs. An easy way to determine whether a consonant is voiced or not is to place a finger on your throat as you pronounce a letter. Feel the vibration of your vocal cords. If you feel a vibration, the consonant is a voiced one. These are the voiced consonants: B, D, G, J, L, M, N, G, R, S, Z, TH, as in the word then, V, W, Y, and Z. But if consonants are only single letters, what are NG, SZ, and TH? They are common sounds that are produced by blending the two consonants phonetically. Here are some examples of words that include voiced consonants. First is traveled, second is gloves, next is sell, started, wells, live, change, dreams, exchange, gloves, ponds. Next is voiceless consonant. Voiceless consonants do not use the vocal cords to produce their hard, persuasive sounds. Instead, they are slack, allowing air to flow freely from the lungs to the mouth, where the tongue and lips engage to modulate the sound. Here are the voiceless consonants: CH, F, K, P, S, SH, T, and TH, as in thing. Common words using them include wash, sit, coats, drop, watch, cards, books, vowels. Vowel sound A, E, I, O, U, and diphthongs, combination of two vowel sounds, are all voiced. That also includes the letter Y when pronounced like a long E. Examples: city, pity, gritty.
Next, changing voice. When consonants are put in groups, they can change the vocal quality of the consonant that follows. A great example is the past simple form of regular verbs. You can recognize this verb because they end in ed. However, the consonant sound of this ending can change from voiced to voiceless, depending on the consonant or vowel that precedes it. Next, in almost all cases, the E is silent. Here are the rules. If the ed is preceded by a voiceless consonant such as a key, it should be pronounced as a voiceless T. Example: park, bark, mark. If the id is preceded by a voiced consonant sound such as B or V, it should be pronounced as a voiced D. Example: rob, thrive, shove. If the ed is preceded by a vowel sound, it should be pronounced as a voiced D, because vowels are always voiced. Example: freed, fried, light. Exception: if the ed is preceded by C, it should be pronounced as a voiced id sound. In this case, the E is pronounced. Example, dot, rot, plate. This pattern can also be found with plural forms. If the consonant preceding the S is voiced, the S will be pronounced phonetically as a Z. Example, chairs, machines, bags. If the consonant preceding the S is voiceless, then the S also will be pronounced as a voiceless consonant. Example, beds, parks, pips. Next, consonant pairs. These pairs of sound are formed the same way. The only difference is whether or not the vocal cords vibrate. For example, the B and P sound are both made with the lips. However, when we say B, we use the vocal cords to make that sound. The B sound is a little longer and stronger. Here, the example consonant for our vocal cords moving. B, back, above. D, die, need. Next, gold, rug. V, very, give. D, this. Zone, has. Next, measure, bulk. Next, jeans, enjoy. Make, Sam. No, tone. Sing, pink. Voiceless. Here, example from voiceless consonant or vocal cords not moving. P, pencil, drop. T, too, white. K, candy, awake. F, fine, before. Thin, with. C, city. She, this. Chain, reach. Examples, final, add. They visit New York, past tense verb. Here is the revised report, adjective. I've lived here a year, past participle. The meeting had started early, past participle. The light bulb was invented by Thomas Edison, past participle. In English, the pronunciation of S ending can sound like s, z, or is, or s. In words that end in a voiceless sound, pronounce the final s like s. Example, final S, trucks are bigger than cars. Plural. This is the interactor's office. Possessive. John works hard every day. Third person singular. She's going to the beach. Contraction for is. It's been a cold winter. Contraction for has. That's our presentation. Sorry if there is a misspelling or mispronunciation. The last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.